How's it going, folks? Everybody doing okay in this heat? Oh, my goodness. Now, I'm from Northeast Oregon, so high mountain desert, so to say that I am used to the heat is an understatement, but still, like it's cloudy out right now, which you'd think would be a blessing, but it's somehow still like 105, even not with the sun like fully shining. That's crazy, that's crazy. So tomorrow, from the time I'm making this video anyhow, tomorrow it's supposed to get up to like 110, 112. Whew, I am hopeful to move further up the mountain soon. That way it'll only be 100 degrees. Because we're high mountain desert, so even the mountains way up top are still real hot. And you think desert, but so you think like all sagebrush and stuff, but really it's pretty lush looking here until like the dead middle of summer. And there is sagebrush, but you usually have to go further into the basin here. Anyhow, so I am here to show you how to make a Pearly Everlasting tincture. Now, maybe you watched my video of meeting Pearly Everlasting in the wild. Maybe you haven't, but I figure let's get started anyway. So the first thing you're going to need for making any tincture is a jar. Try to pick a jar that you can fill up most of the way with the fresh herb and alcohol you have. That's pretty important. Now, normally you all see me like cut up the herb a little bit, the fresh herb, to make sure that there's surface space. But in this case, we're just working with her blooms, the Pearly Everlasting blooms, and they're already so paper dry that they're super absorbent, and blooms in general are just their cellular structure is just really soft. So I don't personally feel the need to chop up her blooms. So I'm just going to put these blooms in a jar. Now, Pearly Everlasting, she's pretty unique to high elevation. She grows in a lot of states, but you're usually not going to find her uncultivated below probably 3,000 feet. So she does like subalpine forest. Like we have a subalpine forest, and that just means a high elevation forest. So if you live somewhere, you know, Colorado, even New Mexico, anywhere that has a high mountain range, you can probably find her. She is native to the US and Canada. But you know, I've heard there are a few different strains that grow in lower elevation, and you've probably seen this plant before, considering she is really loved by florists, like, you know, floral designers, artists with flower, I guess you would call it. No, you know what I'm talking about. Because her bloom, although they're closed now, they closed up on me because it, you know, we kept her cold. These little blooms, when they open all the way, they're like paper. And so if I cured her up, like a type of drying, her blooms would look just the same. And so florists really love her for flower arrangements like that. You know, she's one of the few dried flowers that looks pretty much the same when she's living. And that's just because her blooms have such little water content to them naturally. So we're just filling our jar up, and then we're just going to dump vodka over it. It's really, really that simple. And you're thinking, what is Pearly Everlasting good for? What should I get my ass up a mountain for to look for this medicine? Other than the fact that it's really good for you to get out there and explore the land around you, and that's like the most important thing we can do to keep, you know, land like open and accessible to people, is by being actively on it, is that she is an amazing medicine. Now, not only is she great for colds and flus and fevers, in general, just immune support, but one thing that I really, really, really love her for is that she's a natural antihistamine, meaning she clears your sinuses out. So if you've got a nasty head cold, you know, it's just up here, it's just full of snot, and you just need it out. You know, even if it's running too much, she can really regulate. She can open up your sinuses. She can slow it down some. And because of that, she's really great for allergies too. So we're just going to take our 100 proof vodka, and we're just going to dump right over the top of her. This isn't complicated. This is not as complicated as so many herbalists want you to believe it is. And it only gets complicated when you start using dangerous ass grain alcohol. Now, grain alcohol is flat out poison, and that is why it's not sold and illegal, and it's very illegal in many states, because even a small amount of grain alcohol can kill you. Like if you're consuming, let's say, a cup or so of grain alcohol a day, and even if you're not getting drunk off of it, which I would doubt, you definitely get a buzz off of a cup worth of grain alcohol, and you do that for 4 or 5 days in a row, your liver can just up and quit on you. Your kidneys, it's crazy. Now, if you drink that much of vodka a day, you know, it's not the best thing in the world, but I mean, if you lived a healthy lifestyle otherwise, odds are good that your liver wouldn't even show impaired function. Not that I'm promoting going out and drinking, but the main reason I love to use her in tinctures, aside from the fact that your math is already done for you because it's 50% water, 50% alcohol for 100 proof vodka, and that means your dose is exactly even. The time I put this in there, when I strain her out, excuse me, there's no more math to do. I don't have to add water. I don't have to add water before, and it's so funny because most of these people that make this incredibly complicated, their end result is getting it back to 50-50. That's like, you're just working 10 times harder, because most of them don't want to take the 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to let this sit. Time it takes to make a real tincture, you know, a whole balanced tincture. And we get that whole balance because she's 50% water and 50% alcohol. So you get the water and the alcohol soluble properties, meaning when you just use grain alcohol, which is like 190 plus proof, you are only able to extract the water soluble properties. And sure, you can say it makes a stronger tincture. You're right, it does. It makes a more pharmaceutical-like reaction. Meaning if you are likely to have a reaction for the bad to a tincture, it is gonna be when it's made with grain alcohol. Now another issue is a lot of people use grain alcohol and then they use dried plant matter. I only make tinctures with fresh plant matter, because once that plant dries, you are losing a lot of those water soluble properties as it evaporates, and that's problematic, because then even if you're using 100 proof vodka, you're still not getting the maximum amount of water soluble properties. And all this sounds super overwhelming, but at the end of the day, all you need to remember is jar, fresh plant matter, 100 proof vodka. That's it. And then all these things we're talking about, all that worry is taken away. You've got yourself a whole, safe, simple, well-rounded tincture. And of course, you do not need to be making half-gallon increments like me. I make a large amount of tinctures. But you can just get, you know, about a half-gallon bottle of vodka, and you can get a bunch of different size jars, even though like the half pint, like tiny jelly jars, and you can just go gather enough fresh Pearly Everlasting or whatever you want to use to put in each little jar and fill up, and before you know it, you have like a huge arsenal of safe, simple, fresh plant ally medicine to use all winter long. And this is a great one to put up. You're like, well, you know, maybe I get, you know, colds this winter, but how about do you get allergies in the spring? Start making your medicines you need now to be ready for spring, because in spring you're not going to be able to go out and find Pearly Everlasting or say goldenrod or anything else that's going to help with seasonal allergies or whatever else is going to get to you. So it's just important to be making these medicines before we need them, you know. So the next step is to label it. So I make my own labels. I don't know if you've watched my videos any at all, I say this stuff all the time. I'm like a broken record on these things, but it's important. So I buy these little cheap Avery labels. They usually sell them at, like, you know, any big box store. And then once you buy a pack of them, you get access to their free design program online. And then I just come in and I just put on there if it's a tincture, if it's honey, if it's an oil infusion or other, what date I started it, if it's wildcrafted, store-bought, or a mix. I can put on there how many ounces if need be, product name, what you're going to name it, what it's called, and then like decanted date, which just means the date that you're going to strain it, and then if it's wildcrafted, I say where I got it from. You don't have to make it that complicated. You really don't. That's just, I like to keep good records, and I gotta make batch numbers and stuff like that. But you could just use a piece of masking tape and then just write Pearly Everlasting or whatever herb you're working with. And then 100 proof vodka or whatever alcohol you end up using. And then, you know, the date. Mark that it's a tincture, it's wild crafted, say where I got it from. There. Now, I like to usually write down where I got it from. I always do. Because you'll find that even though plants are the same, sometimes their growing environment is different. So I could say, wow, that Pearly Everlasting from a little lower in elevation really helped with my cough a little bit more than the higher elevation. And maybe the higher elevation seemed to be a little bit better at opening up my sinuses, you know, and you can apply this to any plant. And we really start paying attention to things like this. We can start, like, you know, getting to know these plants and knowing which patch we prefer to gather from, and you know, you could maybe make a combination of two of the same plant from both areas and see what that does. It really just opens you up to all these little possibilities. Plus, if you start writing down where you're getting stuff and you start keeping track of it more than this label, before you know it, you're going to have this huge database, this huge really cool thing of where you can get plant medicines at. And you know, when you're dead and gone, if you've got kids or nieces or nephews or something like that, or anybody to pass that down to, they might really be appreciative of that, because it is kind of hard to get out there and find these places. They're there. You just have to put the effort into going and discovering them. But you know, it's really worth it. So I had something else I was going to say. Oh yeah. So if you can't get 100 proof vodka in your state, because there's even states where that isn't sold, not that it's dangerous, they just don't usually sell anything over 80 proof in certain states, and if that's the case, 80 proof is fine. That's only 10% more water. And you just need to, I've heard a lot of herbalists say, oh, 80 proof doesn't work. It does, you just have to have more patience. With 100 proof, I'm going to sit this in a cool, dark place for 6 to 8 weeks, and then she's ready. If I am working with 80 proof, I'm probably going to go, you know, between 10 to 12 weeks. Just give it that extra time to extract further, and then I find that it's no less effective than 100 proof. Now you're like, oh boy, what if I get busy and I forget? And I forget that I had this tincture, and oh my god, I didn't strain it in time. I get a lot of these questions, and I'm not making fun of anybody, but I get it. This is all new to us, and we're just learning as we go, right? Tinctures will not go bad. I can let this Pearly Everlasting tincture sit for years without even straining it, and she's not going to go bad. Just like this bottle of vodka can sit for years and she's not going to go bad. So don't worry about it if you get busy, but that is an important reason to have labels on your tincture, because you start get going and all of a sudden you've got all these tinctures and it's been years. Maybe you didn't get more familiar with Pearly Everlasting or whatever herb after you harvested it. And you're like, well, shit, I have no idea what this plant is. You know, and eventually you'll be able to ID it through sight and smell and taste, but until that day, and even after that day, just label your tinctures. Now you can, some people write, and I used to do this too, I would write what she is and like the date and stuff on the lid. But sometimes when we're shaking these jars, a little bit of alcohol, a little bit of time, even if it's a Sharpie, and before you know it, you might not really be able to read clearly what you're working with. So just stick with stick-on labels, even if it's masking tape. Okay, I think I gave you more information about labels than I did about Pearly Everlasting. But also, I want you to get curious about these herbs. Like, I want to give you some information, but I also want you to be like, wow, I want to learn more. I want to learn more. I want to go out there and I'm going to search about Pearly Everlasting. I'm going to see if she grows in my area. I'm going to Google Pearly Everlasting, the name of my state. Pearly Everlasting, my county, and I'm going to start finding, and I'm going to even see if I can see where people have recorded where they found her before, because you'd be surprised how much of that information is online, because there's a lot of plant type nerds out there like me that do just that. But you know, I want you to be curious and realize that you are smart enough not only to make a tincture, but to go out there and find these plants and properly ID them and take some of your health back into your own hands. You are absolutely smart enough to do this, okay? And you don't need to pay anybody a lot of money to learn how to do this either. We live in the information and the era of free information. So whatever you're going to pay somebody to teach you in regards to herbalism, they are just compiling free information and feeding it to you. And it usually has their own agenda back behind it and all kinds of just, you know, so go out there, get curious, and teach yourself. You can do this. So if you like my videos, hear me rant about stuff, do me a favor and turn on notifications and subscribe to my channel. I think I said that backwards, but it doesn't matter in which way you do it. It really helps other people find me because it tells YouTube that I'm important enough to be shown to other people. And so it really helps get this information out there. And then like and comment. That does the same thing, and also lets me know that I'm not talking to myself here, that you're here with me, that I don't feel alone in this. I live in a pretty remote area, so it's nice to know that like my voice is heard in that regard, you know, that I'm not just like talking to myself or my dogs like I normally do. So like and comment. I do my best to reply to most stuff. Come find me on Instagram. If you just discovered me on YouTube and you haven't checked out my Instagram, you got a lot to learn about me. And there's just, I really pour myself out on there. I'm not filtered, I'm not perfect, I'm a human, but come interact with me there. There's definitely a lot of information to learn about herbalism there as well. And then come find my website. You can learn even more about me there and interact with me even more. If you haven't noticed yet, I like when people interact with me. So, thank you for watching, and one last time, I want you to remember that you are smart enough to do this, okay? You are smart enough, you are smart enough, you are smart enough. Alright, I will see you next time, okay? Bye.